Hi guys, I'm Silvana from Girls Behind the Rock Show. Today I'm sharing with you my interview with Laura Wheeler, who is the creative behind the Birthday Card album. Now, if you haven't seen her viral TikToks, she's the girl that went from getting an empty birthday card from an ex-boyfriend to writing a poetry anthology about it to curating and producing a breakup album by collaborating with indie artists from across the country. Here at Girls Behind the Rock Show, we are all about using the internet to collaborate with different artists, empower independent musicians, and feature the women and gender diverse people who help make that happen. So I chatted with her over Zoom to learn more about her process and all the inspirations behind the project. So please enjoy, and don't forget to check out her album on Spotify and follow her on TikTok.
I feel very honored but underqualified to be here. Well, my name is Lauren Wheeler. I go by Lar online. By day, I'm an advertising copywriter. I just like writing in all formats all the time, and I've done a lot of different projects online, just like basically challenging myself to to try to write in different ways than I usually do. And so for the past, man, it's been like 9 months now. I have been working on a collaborative album. It was initially inspired by a poetry anthology that I wrote. And then I got the opportunity to connect with a bunch of different music artists and kind of curate and arrange who was going to be adapting each poem into a different song. So a lot of the lyrics are things that I wrote, and a lot of them are things that these other artists brought to the table. So I don't really feel comfortable saying it's like my album. I'll say I curated it. And I did, and the full anthology of poetry is something that I wrote. But the coolest thing about this project is just how collaborative it's been, and how many people I've gotten to work with. So yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also really like how Birthday Card's origin story is sort of documented on TikTok as well,
Yeah.
and you can like rewatch it as it grew. Can you talk a little bit about when you joined the platform, and maybe why you started posting in the first place?
Yeah, this sounds, it's kind of too neat and tidy, but I really did. The Birthday Card is a breakup album, and I started posting on TikTok because I was going through a breakup and I was lonely, and you're just not used to like that person that you talk to every day. I didn't have that anymore, and I was like trying to find a way to like not annoy my friends too much with all the things that I would usually annoy my partner with. So I started posting, I think about like a year ago this month now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you go from getting this idea to sort of write a poetry anthology based off the card to sort of bringing on outside people and other creators as well? And also bringing like music into the mix.
My ex dropped off a blank birthday card at my door, and on the outside there was a little message on it, and inside just an empty card. And that kind of became the inspiration behind Birthday Card, and we used different phrases from the envelope to inspire the poems and the songs. But before that, even, I was thinking a lot about how, because I'd never written music at all, and I was so jealous of that was when Sour was coming out, and I think Taylor Swift had just started re-recording her albums. Fearless had just come out, and I was just thinking a lot about how jealous I was of people who write for music, because especially for women, there's kind of like this really accepted genre where you can write autobiographical stuff, like things that have happened to you. You can be really emotional and specific, and share your experience, and people are like, oh yeah, that's a breakup album, we know what that is. Whereas with I write in a lot of different formats, but I was thinking like, what's my version of that? Like, am I going to write a breakup novella? Am I going to write a breakup, a pilot script that I'm going to, just stuff in a drawer? Like, I didn't know. I was so jealous of that idea of just getting to just cut straight to it and just write exactly about how you're feeling, that I feel like is so like welcome in music. So when I got the card, and I had this kind of at first just like a joking idea of like, maybe wouldn't it be fun to write a format a breakup album kind of inspired by this. I don't know, there's something so so cathartic, and I never done it before, but I could like see it from afar. Like, I knew it was so cathartic to write music and to write something like, from just totally like that kind of classic breakup album format. So initially the idea was just for me to write poems and print them in a CD case and kind of think about it as like, this is my version of that. And it wasn't until I posted the idea on TikTok, I was thinking at that point, like, maybe people on TikTok would want to, take the poems as I'm posting them, and maybe some people might want to turn them into songs. Like, that would be cool to see, kind of in the way that, everything is collaborative online. But when I posted a first video just kind of breaking down what the project was going to be, so many people reached out and said actually that they wanted to be part of it, and it felt more like possible, like it could be something bigger, or it could actually be like a more real album. That wasn't an idea that I had at all. And specifically this artist named Caitlin Cantrell, she DM'd me, and she just had such a clear idea even then of like what this project could be. And it was such a weird idea, especially at first. Like, it was hard for me to even really understand what it would look like or what it would be, but she just like knew. Yeah, so I think she left me a long message and kind of broke down what she thought it would look like. And I listened. I don't know. We just kind of a lot of different people shared their own perspectives, and it was really overwhelming at first, but after a while, like, everything kind of started to fall into place. And yeah, we assembled a team. I think probably about half of the artists on the final album are people who reached out to me, and then the other half are people I reached out to. Yeah, it all just kind of worked out.
Yeah, that's so cool that it was also like a mix too of like people reaching out to you and also reaching out to other people. Is that also sort of the same vein of like reaching out to like Anna Marie Tendler and like the Greens? Where did those ideas come from? Was it like audiences as well, or?
Most of my good ideas come from my sister. Like, she was the one who had the idea originally to even format it in a CD case at all, or to post about it. Like, she'll just kind of throw something out there, like, and I'll be like, sure, and then it'll turn into something crazy. And she's the one who said, because I knew we wanted to have some spoken word tracks on the album, and I just knew I didn't want to read them myself, but I didn't know how I wanted to have them presented. Originally, we had an idea of maybe like recording spoken word tracks in different locations. I talked for a while about I wrote a sonnet, and I talked for a while about maybe like getting some high school theater kids to like perform it on a stage and record that. Like, we just had so many different ideas, and I couldn't really like narrow it down. And my sister threw out, probably joking, like, I don't think she thought it was very serious. She was like, it'd be cool if they were read by people who inspired you, like inspired the project. And I immediately said like, oh, well, the people who inspired the project are Anna Marie Tendler and John and Sarah Green. Like, those are the only people that I would think of. And I'd said that to her before, like several times over the course of the project. I'd made videos about how much this project was like inspired by Anna Marie Tendler's work. And she was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I think everybody, when I said that, were just, yeah, they just kind of had the same expression. They'd look at me and be like, that'd be nice, you know? And I didn't really think it would work out either. So I posted a video on TikTok. I think the coolest thing about this came out of that like period of time where I decided I wanted to involve a lot of people in the decision-making process. So I reached out to the whole, I just posted a video and said, what do you guys think? Should we ask people to record these? Or maybe like, should we ask people in the community if they'd like to help record? And everyone said, post a video for Anna Marie Tendler, we'll get it to her. And I was like, okay, I guess we can all be embarrassed together when it doesn't work out. And so I did, and everyone tagged her and reached out to her. And I don't know how, I don't know if she saw her notifications or if someone who knew her forwarded it to her. I don't know how it worked out, but she DM'd me and agreed to record a track for it. So that was very cool. And the same thing happened with John and Sarah Green. So it all worked out. It was kind of crazy.
Speaking of inspirations, are there any other like music or aesthetic inspirations you had while creating the project and creating like the album artwork?
Yeah. We went in a ton of different directions before we figured out how we wanted everything to look. And just because this whole project, it's a weird thing to include your audience on the creative process as it's happening. And I really understand why people don't do it. Like the more I worked on this, I was like, I really wish I could just present this as a finished product. But because we were constantly trying to figure things out on the fly, and we even had a photo shoot that I thought would be the album artwork we like spent our money on and everything, and just didn't fit the tone of the album once everything was finished. I thought originally that I wanted this to be something very like joyful, kind of have this like cheery energy to it, and that's just not what it ended up being, which is fine. It's a breakup album. And I think that came across as a little bit inauthentic in the end. So I had been thinking a lot about fairy tales, and I'd been like reading a lot about fairy tales that kind of exist across cultures. You see like the same story or variations of, you know, the Cinderella story in cultures from all over the world, and people, you know, trying to kind of trace back and understand like, where is that coming from? Like, do they have a similar point of origin, or is there just something so human about that story that we kind of come up with it in different places all over the world? And that to me like reminded me so much of this experience, because when I posted my first video and like shared everything that had happened, a lot of people left comments or DM me and said, oh, the exact same thing happened to me. And I was like, the exact same thing cannot have happened to you. This is such a weird, specific experience. Like, there's no way. But it's true. Like, I got a lot of emails from people that said, like, this is the weird empty birthday card that I almost sent my ex, or this is the weird thing that they delivered to me, or what, like just variations on the same story. And, you know, like with everything that I wrote and then shared with the other artists, like we all just found that we had these kind of like similar stories, even things that you feel are really specific to you, you know, like just kind of, you can see them everywhere. And I also wanted the album to have kind of like a narrative structure, kind of feel like you can follow the story of the ending of a relationship through it. So yeah, I just really liked the idea of doing something fairy tale-esque. So I found a like this blue velvet shirt that I had. I just grabbed a bunch of weird different things, and we did a photo shoot in my friend's basement with some old like mementos that I had kept from the past. This was a long relationship, like from the past 6 years, and we stuffed an envelope full of them, and kind of created something that reminds me at least of like the old Disney movies when they'll open the Book of Cinderella before the, you know, the animation starts or whatever. And yeah, I just really like it. I actually wrote another poem after we took those photos, called Voicemail, that has a lot of references to fairy tales throughout it, and I felt like kind of tied it all together. And then you asked about music inspirations. I tried really hard to not let any of that impact. I wanted each of the artists, because my thought process was like, I got these weird words that my ex wrote on the envelope, and I took them, and you know, whatever he meant by them doesn't matter. I took them and I turned them into poems based totally on my perspective, right? And I wanted it to kind of continue. I wanted to like continue the game of telephone and like let each of the artists take my poems and kind of separate from whatever I meant by them, you know, turn them into their own lyrics or their own songs. I wanted their music to be my inspiration. I found there were a couple artists that who I wrote poems with in mind, like that I already knew I was going to be collaborating with, and I really loved their style and wanted to write something that hopefully would speak to them. And then there were a couple who took the poems and adapted them into genres that like I never really would have put together. And I think those are the cooler adaptations maybe. But anyway,
it's crazy truly how collaborative it was. I feel like traditionally when someone's writing like the lyrics to an album, it's so vulnerable. A lot of artists are very like hermity, and like they go into a studio, just like write and cry and sort of just like maybe talk to other writers, maybe not. And then they sort of like spend months working on it alone and then releasing it and sharing it with people once they've already sort of like moved on. And with like the music industry, sometimes it comes from like an emotional place of like maybe a year, 2 years ago, and now they're like talking about it and interviewing about it, so it's like less raw. But you really sort of like took everyone along in the process, and sort of sharing those with artists as like the art is happening. I think that's also really cool. It sounds really scary too.
It was really scary. It was so different from the way that I've ever written anything before. If anyone had known me before this year, like I would often say like, oh, I don't think I could ever write for TV because I just like to have control over what I write. I don't like to share it with other people. Like, you know, like I've always thought about myself that way. And I've also always been really private about like dating and relationships in general. So a lot of people in my life were like, what are you doing? This is really different. Yeah, but I think that's part of what made it cool. And I also just like, I didn't really know. I mean, I learned a lot about the music industry through this process, but I had no idea how anything worked before I started it. And I think in some ways, obviously that's a disadvantage. And I was like so glad to have the artists on board to teach me how things work and like help me through it. But in other ways, I think that it was a little bit of an advantage for us because, yeah, we just weren't thinking about doing things the way that the industry does right now. We were just thinking about doing things the way we want to, totally separate from those expectations, you know?
Something that's becoming more popular with music and album releases is, you know, a lot of interactive social media with fans, and also like internet quiz is a big thing too, like leading up to album releases. So can you talk a little bit about what it was like to release Birthday Card as well?
Yeah. Part of what sounded fun to me about this project back when I was thinking about it, like in June, July, was like, I don't know. I've always been very curious about just kind of what must be going on behind the scenes in like a pop star narrative, you know, of like, what is your relationship with the person who you wrote that song about? Like, what did they say to you when they heard it? Or what did, you know, like, what is it like to have other people interpret what you said in different ways or whatever. I just thought that kind of like, I almost thought about it as like a social experiment a little bit. Like it'd be so fun to kind of see what that is like on the other side. And so we decided to do kind of like an Easter egg type, hunt to figure out what the release date was going to be. And that was another thing that I was like, it's kind of fun to be on the other side of this and like think about, because I do love it when my favorite artists do that too. So it was really fun. We did a series of like email clues and clues in my videos and all sorts of different things pointing to Valentine's Day, and we did a big release on Valentine's Day, which is really fun.
I'm glad it worked out that way too. I feel like it's a very fitting date to release.
I know. I wanted it so badly to work out. Well, I remember I was talking to the artists like months ago. I think I was talking to Kaden Wemple, who wrote Stocking Up. And I was saying, like, we want everything to be ready for February. Probably not Valentine's Day. That's too corny. And he was like, oh, you might want to think about it. And I was just like, no, there's no way. It's a little too cliche. But actually, when we got to it, I actually really liked it because it's I mean, I was single this Valentine's Day. I think a lot of the people who are following this project were. Sometimes people in really, really happy relationships will tell me that they were following this project so closely, and I'm like, why? But yeah, it's kind of it was really nice to have something so fun to look forward to and kind of make the day about something else.
So I guess it's sort of like a nice way to reflect on the past year or two of your life, is sort of like in the perspective of the project and the relationship. What do you think is your biggest like takeaways from like the project, and also like your following and like how it affected your life, What do you think is like the thing you like take with you like in the next year?
The biggest thing, like by a mile, is I asked for submissions of people recording themselves reading one of the poems. So one of the spoken word tracks is like an amalgamation of everyone's voices, or as many as we could fit. And I got all these submissions from people reading the poem from literally all over the world, like countries I like couldn't even pronounce. They were like walking me through the pronunciation, or like just people from everywhere. I one person recorded it with their grandmother. One person, like just like this massive range of ages and genders and different experiences, just like everyone. And a lot of them shared messages with me about what they had been going through over the past year, what this project had meant to them. And it was just such I hope it like forever changed my perspective on just like how I speak to people that I see on the street. Like it was so interesting. I remember when, it's so weird that I had this thought, but I remember when I got the card and I was just sad. Like the next day I was just bummed out. Like, oh, I had a weird interaction with someone that mattered a lot to me, and I'm having a hard day, and I saw someone post online about the theory that, if the universe is infinite and everything has happened an infinite number of times, then there are other places in the universe where the exact same thing that's happening to you is, happening somewhere else. And I remember seeing that and thinking, okay, that's a really ridiculous thought, but like, sure, like it would definitely make me feel better to imagine that somewhere out there, there's another person exactly like me who also got this card and is feeling this exact same way, sitting on her front step right now and being, bummed about this. And it was kind of incredible that like all those months later, getting all those emails and voice memos from people, just hearing like that is true. Like whatever you're going through, however you're feeling, somewhere out there, someone is feeling the exact same way. And also just that you have so much in common with people that you might not assume you do at first glance, like walking past them. This project just started as something so like isolating. Like I was using it to write about things that I thought like only I've ever gone through this, and it's so weird and specific that I have to write about it. And I learned that that's just not true at all, that they're just the most like common human experiences and we all are kind of going through things together. And it actually like it made me so much I don't know, I think just really, if you can really believe that, I think it like helps, at least for me, in like every aspect of my life. Like it made me a lot less angry about anything that had happened in that relationship, to see everyone else's stories and just be like, oh, people are like this. Things like this happen in every relationship all over the world, you know, or just yeah, it made me a lot more, hopefully, like empathetic. And anyway, it was really cool. It was just the coolest thing ever.
After especially like 2020 and like most of
Yeah.
2021, I think a lot of people really felt isolated. A lot of people also broke up in
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
So I think that was definitely cool for people to sort of like see and like feel seen in that way. And I also think a lot of creators or people out there who would like want to do a cool project like this as well, like I think they go through that fight of like desperately feeling like they want to be seen in this experience, and then also being terrified of like sharing that and actually being seen on the internet. So it's really cool that you also like allowed other people to sort of participate and like have that gratifying feeling too, of like being a part of something with like a ton of other people
I know.
from everywhere.
I'm so glad I did. Like I didn't, that wasn't part of the initial project at all. It was like the last idea that we had basically was to include other people in that spoken word track. And yeah, I think it's the coolest thing I think it's the coolest part of the whole thing. It's so cool.
We also like to end our interviews by asking just what you've been listening to lately on Spotify, and any artists you'd like to share that you've been really into.
Oh man. Well, just today, Leith Ross released "We'll Never Have Sex" on Spotify. So I just barely before I got on this call, I was so excited. I had to like immediately go and listen to it and favorite it. I love all their music. I kind of have you know, I kind of couldn't listen to a lot of Leith Ross while I was working on Birthday Card, because I was like, I'll get too disappointed in myself. They're just such a talented writer, but now I can.
That's crazy. I definitely was like on TikTok too, like, oh my God, it's actually getting released today after so long, and like listening to the sound on the app only. And it was cool too. I was like listening back to the lyrics as well. And I'd been thinking about like Twilight and, you know, Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson being in the news again and like the height of their careers. And listening to the lyrics, I'm like, this would be on like a Twilight playlist back in like 2008 with the lyrics, and like suck the rot right out of my bloodstream. Like, okay, this is like Bella Swan poetry that she wrote in her diary.
Oh, it's such a Twilight song. Well, the Twilight soundtracks are, I mean, there's nothing like the Twilight soundtracks. There never will be.
Yeah, it was definitely like possibly the most formative piece of media when I was like a preteen or a teen, was the Twilight soundtrack. Paramore too is like my favorite band of all time. And I was a huge Twilight kid. So yeah, definitely affected who I am as a human.
I think especially the Twilight and New Moon soundtracks, like they'll hold up forever. Like I just think that they're great playlists. They're just like yeah, they're the best part of those movies.
And I also heard that Kristen Stewart actually had like some input on like what got on the album as well. Such a classic move. But yeah, so it was great talking to you. Thank you for giving me your time today.
Yeah, of course. It's so nice talking to you too. Thank you so much for inviting me.